Welcome to Tricky Truths, the podcast where we deep dive into the real underlying causes of trichotillomania. I'm Laura, a clinical nutritionist and founder of Trichy Nutrition, and I'm here to help you uncover the hidden connections between your body, mind, and the hair pulling cycle. In each episode, we're going to explore the root causes for your hair pulling behaviors, from nutrient deficiencies and gut health imbalances to stress, hormones, and a lot more, because trich is never just a habit, there's always a bigger story behind it. If you're ready for insights, strategies, and support that go beyond surface level solutions, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Let's dive straight in today. I want to talk about something that I shared recently on my Trichy Nutrition page. It's what I called the Trichotillomania Umbrella, and it came with a graphic. You may have seen it. I've had a few hundred people comment on this post, and I've also had a few hundred new followers from this particular post. So it's a graphic that has Trichotillomania Umbrella. It's got a bunch of comorbid disorders, and then underneath the umbrella is a bunch of symptoms, which includes hair pulling. So it includes hair pulling, allergies, skin picking, digestive issues, teeth grinding, all of that. And then underneath the symptoms, I've also got the underlying causes. So what I talk a lot about with the inflammation, nutrient deficiencies, heavy metal toxicity, infections, gut imbalances, that sort of thing. So I wanted to put in place a graphic that basically has it sums up everything that I see in my clinical practice. And honestly, it's everything that I really wish people understood more about hair pulling and how it comes about. So I know for a very long time, trich has been seen as just a habit or just a behavioral issue, or, honestly, it gets put in that box of mental health, and they sort of put this psychological and it distances itself from the physical body. And what I want to see is I'm basically in this graphic wanting to put the physical with that psychological and make sure that we're looking at the body as an overall and not just looking at single symptoms. So on that note, so when we look at symptoms, so let's have a look at symptoms first. So we can see underneath the umbrella, we've got hair pulling, we've got skin pricking, we've got anxiety, fatigue, digestive issues, we've got joint pain, anger, frequent UTIs, so urinary tract infections. I want to point out all of those, and I just want, if you're listening now, if you are someone who has struggled with trich, or you have a child that is hair pulling, I'd like you to look at all of those symptoms and see how they all, how they're all connected, how we want to connect. This is what I really want to get across on this post, is not just looking at the one symptom. So I know obviously we've got those comorbid disorders and they can overlap with a lot of those symptoms, but I really want to get across is something especially in the first part of a trich recovery journey, is really looking at all those symptoms and looking for, then we look at the underlying, like you look at what is causing all of those symptoms. And I know I had someone in clinic yesterday who actually said to me that their child is a 10-year-old with trichotillomania, and she's had rashes over the years. So she's had some rashes, and she knew that there was and allergies as well, and she knew there was something in the gut, right? And she has done things for her child, and she's like, I know there's something with the gut because she's got this skin. So obviously there's been enough in, she's been exposed to enough research or enough things on the internet or enough people that she's talked to that she puts those two and two together. There'd be some people out there that wouldn't put those things together yet, but they do now. And that's what I try to do with Trichy Nutrition, and obviously with this graphic that I'm talking about today, is putting these symptoms together with what's happening with the hair pulling, with that behavior. So it's not just looking at that. So then we want to look at the top part of the umbrella. So we're looking at the comorbid disorders. So when we talk about comorbid disorders, this refers to the presence of other co-occurring conditions. So they're happening in the body at the same time. So, and often they influence each other or they overlap. So you'll have similar like sensory processing things come up with someone that might have ADHD or also autism or anxiety. Anxiety can be part of PTSD, it can be part of ADHD, it can be part of autism. So we're looking at different comorbid disorders. So when we look at that, so the whole idea of having that at the top of the umbrella is to show that, you know, these disorders, they're usually marked by a bunch of symptoms. Okay, so that's why I've got the comorbid disorders at the top of the umbrella, and underneath we've got the bunch of the symptoms. So usually if you're getting an assessment for one of these conditions, you will fill out a form, and basically if you tick it and the severity is high enough that it's affecting day-to-day function, that's when you will get, like, they've got a certain, you know, amount of ticks that you will get, and you'll be labeled or diagnosed with that disorder. Okay, but there is a lot of overlap with those, and you know, unfortunately there's not just a blood test that'll say, you know, you get a blood test, say for instance for Hashimoto's, we'll look at your thyroid stimulating hormone, we'll know that that is high, you have an underactive thyroid, and you will be diagnosed with Hashimoto's, okay? But unfortunately, a lot of these comorbid disorders that I've mentioned here, such as autism, ADHD, ODD, PANS, PANDAS, bipolar, depression, unfortunately, these don't have just a blood test. They're going on an assessment, and it's going on a bunch of symptoms. So that's why I've mentioned that in the overarching. And then we've got all these symptoms down below. Then below that is where I come in. So that's where I look at what are the underlying causes for all of these symptoms. And then obviously all of those symptoms added up will, you know, account for these disorders being diagnosed. Okay, so that's where I come in. So the ones that I've listed here are inflammation. So I talk about inflammation as inflammation in the gut, inflammation in the body. If we've got both of those things, we usually have inflammation in the brain. So whether that's from a heavy toxin load, an inflammatory diet, something that you've been exposed to, there's often inflammation in the body. This isn't the case for everybody, and that's why I list so many underlying causes, but I do notice inflammation is one of those key things that I'm finding. These are the top sort of 6 things that I do look at often. So nutrient deficiencies, and they all overlap each other. So when we've got an inflamed gut, we're probably going to have nutrient deficiencies, right? So if we've got an inflamed gut, we're not absorbing things properly. We're probably not breaking things down and absorbing properly. So then we end up with these nutrient deficiencies. So, and when we've got these nutrient deficiencies, if you look at any metabolic pathway in the body, it is going to affect function. So it's going to affect how you sleep. It's going to affect, hair pulling. It's going to affect your mood. It's going to affect, whether you're a picky eater or not. So a zinc deficiency, I know I talk about a lot on Trichy Nutrition, is definitely a big one for picky eating. Okay. So nutrient deficiencies is the second one there that I look at in the underlying causes. And then we've got heavy metal toxicity. So I talk about heavy metal toxicity, but I also talk about toxins in general. But I have recently started doing a lot of heavy metal assessments and looking at what is happening there. So I'll often look. So one key familiar one that's coming up a lot in heavy metal testing is aluminium, for instance. Okay. And I know my American clients say aluminum. So when I say aluminium, that is what I'm talking about. So aluminium. So we've got high levels of aluminium. Now, what we know about aluminium, it blocks zinc. Okay. So zinc can't get into the cells. Think of aluminium in deodorant. So we use it in deodorant. It's blocking things. It's blocking that odor from coming through. Okay. That's what it's there to do. It's there to block things up. So think we eat out of aluminium cans. You may heat up like a roast with aluminium foil. There's a lot of things that we do in day-to-day life that could have aluminium in it that could be contributing to this. However, if we've got a good system and things are detoxing properly, we shouldn't have a problem unless we're being too much exposed to it, detoxing from this. Okay. So, and that's another one that I've got written here is methylation issues. So when we've got methylation issues, so methylation refers to how we're converting folate properly. And I do have a masterclass on the MTHFR gene. So it is a big topic. I'll have to do a future podcast about it. But when we're not methylating properly, which is probably over half of my Trich clients, we don't detox properly. So if we're not detoxing properly, we're not getting rid of these heavy metals that we're all exposed to these heavy metals. We're exposed to all of these things around us. There's no way of avoiding it these days. Even if you're eating completely organic and you're trying your best, to use these, fancy things like you think your headphones, your wireless headphones or your microwave or, your non-stick pans, all of these things, have been contributing to this toxin load for us. Okay. But we need to think about how we're detoxing and obviously lowering that exposure. But all of these things, these toxins, so heavy metals in particular, are blocking other nutrients and other functions from happening. So that's why they're causing these symptoms. So I also talk about gut imbalances and infections, which do go hand in hand. So when I often talk about infections, I'm talking about candida, so candida overgrowth yeast in the gut, and we're also talking about parasites, which I do find a lot of my clients, it may have started with like a pinworm infestation when they started pulling. I know a lot of my children under the age of 10 or even my teenage clients and the adult clients, I will say, there's a lot of parasites and candida that we have to clear for things to function properly. So a lot of that fidgeting, teeth grinding, and of course the hair pulling can really be contributed to parasites. But obviously when we've got parasites, we've usually got, that turns into iron deficiency. So then we've got a nutrient deficiency. So see how everything connects. So I'm trying to, with this Trichotillomania Umbrella, I'm really trying to piece this all together for you. We've got all those underlying causes that I've written there and just talked about, how they are contributing to those symptoms. And then when we've got too many symptoms or these symptoms are so severe, we then have these disorders. So including the hair pulling, including other body focused repetitive behaviors, and including what I'm sure, you may have experience with some of these other disorders such as anxiety, depression, autism, ADHD. Okay. So hair pulling is not, the main thing I want to get across here is hair pulling is just this little piece. I know it feels overwhelming and it's the biggest part of everything happening right now, but we've got to look at all of these other symptoms, and then we've got to really investigate these underlying causes. That's the main thing I want you to learn from this Trich umbrella that I've created. And I do hope that you take on this information and do your own research. And if you need to speak to me, I'm more than happy to have a conversation about this. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Tricky Truths. I hope it gave you some clarity and a deeper understanding of the root causes behind trichotillomania. If you'd like to keep learning, you can find me on all of your favourite social media places: Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Here I share tips, client wins, and resources every week. For video content and deeper dives, head over to my Tricky Nutrition YouTube channel. And if you're ready for more personalised support, you can book in for one-on-one sessions or a treatment package with me. Here we will work together to uncover your root causes and build a plan tailored just for you. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and I'll see you next time.